Hello and welcome to the No One Asked You podcast. I'm reading The Wheel of Time for the first time and sharing the experience with you. This is One Good Turn, The Eye of the World, and today I am covering Chapter 5. It's begun. The destruction. I'm pretty sure it's not just at the farm. They are going to be in for a very rude awakening when they get back into the village. Before I even get into all of that, though, I realized that there was one thread, plot point, important thing that I neglected to bring up from the prologue chapter. And it was something to the effect of Luce Theron Telamon suggesting that he had overstepped in some way. I forget the exact passage, but the idea was something to the effect of he wanted to make something perfect. It suggested he took an act of arrogance or hubris, and that is what led to the Dark One's counterstroke, I think. So I just wanted to highlight, I didn't miss that when I was going through it. It just flew out of my mind as far as bringing it up here. That said, Chapter 5 starts. The sun is halfway down from its noonday high, meaning it's getting close to evening. Not terribly close, but late afternoon to be certain. And there's a nice paragraph about how families tend to live together in the two rivers, but it's just Tam and Rand at home in theirs. They inspect their property to make sure that the black-clad man hadn't come in. They find their animals are still penned up, and they don't want to let the whole day go to waste. So Rand gets to work gathering eggs, chopping wood, stabling the horse, and he spends a good long time chopping the wood to the point that he ends up being quite sore later on. So, add that to the level of exhaustion I'm sure he's going to feel having to deal with the Trollocs that come later. Oh, yes, we get my new favorite character. It's a shame he's not going to be around for long. Eventually, it comes time to prepare for dinner. So Tam and Rand head in, more or less, for the night. Jordan describes a very quaint-looking home. A broad oaken table was the main feature of the room. Cabinets, chests skillfully made by Tam himself. A cushioned chair, the travels of Jane Farstrider sitting on a table. It sounds very quaint and cozy. As Tam cooks the stew, Rand goes to wash up. Curiously, though, Tam also goes and locks the front and back door. And that's the first thing he does in this chapter that suggests that he's on edge. It's very uncommon, I guess, to lock the doors. Again, I really, really do get this sense that Tam knows things that he hasn't told Rand. I'm very curious specifically what those things are and how much he knows about what's going on currently. Like, it's one thing if 20 or 30 years ago he was a soldier, so he's seen a Trolloc. That doesn't necessarily mean that he knows that Rand may or may not be, but probably is, the Dragon Reborn, or that they're dealing with Trollocs. And I don't expect him to share everything with Rand, but I would like to know, more or less, what Tam is expecting here. So Tam goes to his room and gets a sword that Rand didn't even know his father had. And he notes that it's very similar to Lan's sword, minus the herons. I do wonder if herons have a unique symbolic meaning. Obviously, doves do. Obviously, as far as this book is concerned, ravens mean a very specific thing. I don't know off the top of my head what a heron means, and if it was described earlier regarding Lan, I either missed it or didn't pay much attention at the time, but hearing it here, that set my mind to that thought. Anyway, Tam explains he essentially overpaid for it. You get the sense that it's not so much the monetary element of overpaying it more so than the ideological aversion to violence here, particularly because Tam invokes Rand's mother as not liking the sword. It was something he shouldn't have gotten. In fact, here's what Tam says. I got it a long time ago, a long way from here, and I paid entirely too much. 2 coppers is too much for one of these. Your mother didn't approve, but she was always wiser than I. I was young then, and it seemed worth the price at the time. She always wanted me to get rid of it, and more than once I've thought she was right, that I should just give it away. I'm wondering what this could mean for Rand in the future. I'm always looking for elements of mirroring. It seems a young man wants a sword, particularly in fantasy books such as these, so I'm going to be keeping an eye out for times at which Rand may or may not be purchasing a sword to link back to this moment. At the same time, the sword comes in very useful in this chapter, so, if you need it to defend yourself, you do. You may not need it 98% of that time, but the other 2% when you do, you're glad you have it. Anyway, the stew is just about ready. Rand goes to the tea canister, and they hear a knocking at the door. And then almost immediately the door flies open. The door burst open, pieces of the iron lock spinning across the floor. A figure filled the doorway bigger than any man Rand had ever seen. A figure in black mail that hung to his knees with spikes at wrists and elbows and shoulders. One hand clutched a heavy scythe-like sword. The other hand was flung up before his eyes as if to shield them from the light. Rand felt the beginnings of an odd sort of relief. Whoever this was, it was not the black-cloaked rider. Then he saw the curled ram's horns on the head that brushed the top of the doorway, and where mouth and nose should have been was a hairy muzzle. So, that is our first description of what ends up being a Trolloc. And it's almost like a satyr, but not quite. Certainly much more evil and scary sounding, much more demonic. And it's interesting because I had, up until this point, I suppose, imagined them a little bit differently. Trolloc obviously starts with the word troll. I think it was suggested that they live in the mountains or something to that effect earlier on in the book. So I guess I had imagined a slightly more stereotypical troll type being, which, if I were going to imagine a troll from nothing, I'm imagining a humanoid rhinoceros, bullfrog kind of being. This is obviously quite different. Certainly this one seems to invoke the Dark One much more. The really cool part about this, though, was Rand's lightning quick reaction. He took in all of it in the space of one deep breath, then he let out in a terrified yell as, without thinking, he hurled the hot kettle at that half-human head. So, barely a thought, barely a breath, and he just immediately goes after it. Very proud of Rand in this moment. His dad shouts at him to run and hide in the woods. There are others trying to get in. His dad's fighting at them with the sword. Rand runs to the back, but the door is locked, so he can't get out. So he runs over to a side window and gets out. He doesn't want to go too far, though, because he wants to go back and help his dad. And he starts shouting out, they're coming in the back. He's outside, run. There's a really great moment where he sort of jump scares himself. Like a fox running from hounds, he darted into the nearest moon-cast shadows as if headed for the woods, then dropped to his belly and slithered back to the barn and its larger, deeper shadows. Something fell across his shoulders, and he thrashed about, not sure if he was trying to fight or escape, until he realized he was grappling with the new hoe handle Tam had been shaping. Idiot! For a moment he lay there trying to stop panting. Copeland, fool idiot! At last he crawled on along the back of the barn, dragging the hoe handle with him. It was not much, but it was better than nothing. So that was humorous, an interesting bit of levity, at least for me, not for him, certainly, in what is a very tense, action-oriented chapter. The sheep are frightened, understandably so, and then we get one of the first cool things in this chapter. Suddenly, one of the windows burst outward in a shower of glass and wood as Tam leaped through it, sword still in hand. He landed on his feet, but instead of running away from the house, he dashed toward the back of it, ignoring the monstrous things scrambling after him through the broken window and the doorway. Very cool. Big fan of Tam right now. Rand shouts out for him, and then Tam comes running out again, but he's running away from Rand, doing the good fatherly thing, trying to get these creatures away from his son. And then he calls out in another direction. He calls out and speaks to Rand, but it's in another direction, presumably trying to trick the Trollocs, telling him to run and hide, which he does. And then he's wandering through the woods. He's trying to move extremely quietly as if he were stalking a rabbit. Seems like the good, smart choice to make. If there are things in the woods after you, you try and move quietly. And then jump scare number 2, essentially, although I felt as if I knew immediately what it would be. He feels a hand on his mouth, and it's his dad. It is Tam. Tam is injured, by the way. He needs some rest. But then he drops some Trolloc lore on us. I never saw one before tonight, but I've talked with men who have, so I know a little. Maybe enough to keep us alive. Listen closely. A Trolloc can see better than a man in the dark, but bright lights blind them for a time at least. That may be the only reason we got away from so many. Some can track by scent or sound, but they're said to be lazy. If we can keep out of their hands long enough, they should give up. To which Rand responds, in the stories they hate men and serve the Dark One. If anything belongs in the shepherd of the night's flocks, lad, it is Trollocs. They kill for the pleasure of killing, so I've been told. But that's the end of my knowledge, except that they cannot be trusted unless they're afraid of you, and then not far. So they have a high perception check, they can hear like a dog, they're weak to daze, and they can be intimidated. Good to know. Oh, you know what? It totally just came into my mind. I imagine they look like the Capra demon from Dark Souls. That's a good image. Scary. So Tam is injured, bleeding, and he has a fever. And it's going to be very difficult for Rand to be able to carry him all the way to Nynaeve. So he decides to go back into the barn and the house to get some gear. He does take the sword with him. He's crawling around, and all of the goats are dead. The cow is dead. The horse is probably dead. He realizes it because it's eerily quiet, and then he checks on them, and yeah, they kill for fun. He makes it into the house, he starts gathering things, and then we get my favorite character, who's killed off way too soon. One of the Trollocs was pretending to be dead. One of the Trollocs was getting to its feet. A wolf's muzzle jutted out below sunken eyes, flat, emotionless eyes, and all too human. Hairy, pointed ears twitched incessantly. It stepped over one of its dead companions on sharp goat hooves. The same black mail the others wore rasped against leather trousers, and one of the huge scythe-curved swords swung at its side. It muttered something guttural and sharp, then said, Others go away. Narg, stay. Narg, smart. The idea of a smart Trolloc is great. I'm big fan of that. The words were distorted and hard to understand, coming from a mouth never meant for human speech. Its tone was meant to be soothing, he thought, but he could not take his eyes off the stained teeth, long and sharp, that flashed every time the creature spoke. Narg know some come back sometime. Narg wait. You no need sword. Put sword down. Don't trust it, Rand. So Narg is promising he's not gonna hurt him. Put the sword down. This is a very smart Trolloc, it seems, up until the end. He says, Put sword down, Narg no hurt. Myrddraal want talk you. So the moment he mentioned a Myrddraal, I wondered if the horse rider with the black cloak that Rand has been freaked out about all day was the Myrddraal. We don't know yet specifically what a Myrddraal is, so it would not surprise me to learn that that thing was the Myrddraal, and he is in command of these Trollocs. We get the word fade. Rand wet his lip. Myrddraal, the worst of the stories, was walking tonight. If a fade was coming, it made a Trolloc pale by comparison. He had to get away, but if the Trolloc drew that massive blade, he would not have a chance. So he says, all right, he'll talk, and he lowers the sword. Rand, you fool. Immediately, Narg charges at Rand, which was disappointing. I thought Narg was smart. Why not agree to the... If the Myrddraal does in fact want to talk, unless Narg is lying, which, I mean, look, I don't think the Dark One's going to complain if a potential Dragon Reborn is killed. So I get it. Look, if he was willing to wait, nah, it's fine. This is a demonic creature, likely has impulse control problems. He tried to be smart. Best character. Far and away, best character. Rand gets the sword up just in time and manages to impale the Trolloc before any serious damage to him could be done. He grabs what he can. He heads back out to the barn. Bella and the cow are gone, and the cart, it's a bit wonky. It's slightly damaged, or it's not built specifically to be pulled by him. So he ends up using the sword to break elements of it, and he makes it so that he should be able to put his father on the cart and pull him all the way to the village. He feels confident they would be safe and that Nynaeve would be able to cure Tam, so they head on their way. End chapter. It's begun, guys! Very exciting, action-oriented. Rip Narg. I don't know what else there is to say. Thank you all for tuning in. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll see you next time. Okay, thanks, bye!